Welcome back. We're now joined by Barrister Ebun-Olu Adegboruwa. He's a human rights lawyer, and in fact, he actually does not need any introduction if you really follow what happens in the country. So welcome back welcome once again, Barrister Adegboruwa.
It's my pleasure. Good morning.
Yeah. You're quoted as saying that the government is only using uncompleted projects for the 2023 to make political gains as we move towards the 2023 elections. I'm sure most of our viewers would like to hear your perspective. Could you please expatiate?
Thank you very much. Viewers, good morning, Nigerians. I said that in line with my experience, and I'm sure the experience of most Nigerians, with politicians who give promises when they contest elections and thereafter they disappear. You will recall that towards the end of the administration of President Goodluck Jonathan, he made a lot of fanfare about the reconstruction of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. And there was a lot of publicity about how the road will be completed. And it was clearly meant to buy electorates, or clearly meant to buy votes. That government was never serious or committed to that project. Unfortunately, people saw through that gimmick and did not vote for that particular regime in spite of that promise. It is the same way that the current government of President Muhammadu Buhari has been using major projects to tie down people's expectations. You know how many times you have gotten deadlines about completion of Second Niger Bridge, and it's been shifted even now to some indefinite dates because of the elections. Because the impression is that people within those locations who are to benefit from those projects are being told with style that this government is serious, so let there be continuity. If you allow the same government that is executing the project to continue, you can be sure of a completion. So even though there is funds to do this project, it's deliberately being delayed as a bait, as a kind of carrot to get people to believe in the theory of continuity. So that if the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is not completed and another regime comes, they may abandon it. It's the style of politicians, and it's unfortunate. And why I say it's unfortunate, because you are toying with lives of people, with the health of people, with the destiny of people. And you can imagine what goes on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. And this will now stand in the Guinness Book of World Record as the longest project embarked upon by any government, spanning two administrations, right from 2012 to this moment. There is no particular date you can say the project will be completed. We don't know how much is involved, what is the cost of the project, how much has been paid as mobilization to the contractor. Otherwise, the Julius Berger that we know in terms of road construction should not be on this road for 8 years. Let's even remove that of President Goodluck Jonathan. Since this particular administration came, the section of the road from Shagamu Interchange to Lagos is less than 100 kilometers. How can an international reputable company as Julius Berger embark upon reconstruction of a 100-kilometer road for 8 years? It's scandalous. And there's no evidence of completion or that it will be handed over. So I made that statement advisedly, that interpreting the conduct of this government, it is deliberately underfunding the project. It is deliberately not accelerating that completion as a means of currying votes and high people to the fortunes of the APC government. Because if you look at the whole scenario, there is no basis for this delayed completion. No basis at all. Because if you travel with me to that road, you will see the evidence of negligence, evidence of unseriousness on the part of the contractor. They will narrow the road on one point, and you get to the point of the narrowing, nothing is going on. You drive further down, you see that the road is also narrowed, nobody there. Imposing suffering on our people. And I experienced it. And I also know a fellow colleague, a senior advocate, an elderly person who traveled out of Lagos. And on his way coming back to Lagos, he ran into that traffic and developed health complications. Those in his car tried to manage him to open the door so that he could go down and take breeze and be able to move around, but it was too late. And he died in this country less than a month ago. And this is what goes on. There are other people who are dying that we don't even know. So the point I make is that a construction project, a road project, is not worth the life of any Nigerian. There is no government that should construct a road that will lead to the death and agony of his people. Because there should be planning. You know the extent of the road. This is the busiest road in Nigeria, if not Africa. You know how this road is. What are the alternatives? What is the program you have put in place to accelerate it, to reduce the suffering of people? What are the health protocols that you have embarked upon? Is there an ambulance on the opposite side so that if anybody has any emergency, you can quickly evacuate them to a safe place or to a hospital?
All right.
Are there traffic management agencies that are helping to control those errant people who probably are driving against traffic?
Okay.
Is there security agents?
Let me ask you
Are
this
there
question,
security
Barrister.
agencies that are providing safety? I was on that road 2 a.m. and I spent close to 4 hours with my wife, with my valuables. No electricity, no illumination, no security. You are left to the fate of cultists, kidnappers, violent people, armed robbers. No single police presence. For the whole 4 hours that I spent on that road, we were all praying.
Okay.
And this is what Nigerians go through every day.
Let's look at it from this angle. Are you of the school of thought that, projects must be started and completed by any government? What I mean by that is there a place for continuity? For example, a government that, comes into power and starts up a project, but let us assume a very huge project that is supposed to span years. Do you not think that there should be a place for, the next government coming in to take over and complete this project, seeing that it is for the good of the entire nation?
Although I don't have any problem with continuity. And as you can see, there are several projects that one government starts and another completes it. But the point I'm making is that at the resumption of this particular government, a promise was made. A promise was made, a covenant was made to say, this is how long it will take us to complete the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway project. Because it's scientific. It is something that you were able to outline the timeline for the construction. You remember that at a particular time, Julius Berger openly threatened to quit the project for lack of funding. You can Google it now. So it's not about that one is against continuity or that a government must complete a project. But this is a project that has a timeline, and it was not funded. And that's why we're experiencing this delay.
Okay, some of these things that happen, a lot of us have said, or a lot of people have said that it's because there's no mechanism of trying to hold these people accountable, trying to hold the government accountable. You are a lawyer, you are a human rights activist, you are so many things rolled into one. But the people like you who are fighting this cause seem to be few and far apart. How else can the citizenry be a part of this fight to get the government to do the right thing at the right time for the people?
Thank you very much. I'm an individual. You can imagine the things that we go through. We institute cases to stop the extortion of Lekki Toll Gate and other tolling activities. We were involved in ensuring that people who are protesting at NSAS and so many other engagements that we are involved in preserving the rights of the people. So that's why I'm drawing attention to this, because there's a limit to what I can do as an individual. So civil society organizations, NGOs, CSOs, and indeed public-spirited persons, individuals who are well connected, and indeed politicians themselves should listen to us and please come to the aid of the people and stop this agony and stop this carnage. that is going on that road, and get the government to fund the project, to be committed, to be responsible, and then to embark on protocols for constructions like this that will alleviate the pain and suffering of the people by making enough provisions for healthcare, for security, for information management. The road is blocked. This is how long it will take you. There's an alternative road. You can go through a pair. You can go through this. That's what a government should do, so that people will have a choice.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Mr. Adegboruwa. My question has to do with whether our politicians have learned anything. And by this, I would just go back maybe to the First Republic. You know, this same accusation that politicians tend to use projects to buy votes, so to speak, was also a prevailing allegation then. You know, that they would just bring, okay, we were not as sophisticated as we are now, but that you might find in some communities a trailer load of sand or a trailer load of whatever, and they just come and dump it there and give the impression that work is going to start soon. You know, they do this close to the election, and then people are hyper interested and active and everything, and then they go and vote or whatever. But then after the elections, the sand is, they come back and take the sand away. It's almost like the same thing playing out now. So have our politicians learned something? Or are they just repeating the same old tricks? You know, and thanks for your perspective on how they can be held to account. But have they learned anything?
Thank you very much. I think that if you study the political development of Nigeria, it goes back to the issue of leadership recruitment in terms of how we bring up people who will represent us. Because that is actually the core of it. I mean, and I gave the example of the Prime Minister of Britain, Mrs. Liz Truss. In less than 2 months, she said, I'm resigning. The expectation and promise I gave to the people, I don't have the wherewithal to execute or perform it. But I don't have anything at stake. I'm not embezzling money. I wasn't going to that office to use it to build mansions. I wasn't going to that place to enrich myself. So I have nothing at stake. I'm leaving. And she left. That can never happen in Nigeria. Because those who are in authority have denied our people basic infrastructure. You cannot travel. There's no train. The roads in the whole of the Southwest are totally collapsed. You can't go anywhere. If you want to fly, it costs so much. So, and what this means, therefore, is that when people get to positions of authority, they have to embark on corruption. Because for you to be able to travel first class, for instance, in Nigeria, for about 7 million naira, and when do you get that as a salary earner, except you are stealing money? And you see our leaders, our politicians are with their families traveling first class, we buying jets every day. So politicians will not change because you ask me whether they have learned. This is their way. In Nigeria, they see political office as a means of aggrandizement. That's why it's so tension-soaked. That's why everything depends on it. Because once people get to power, they don't know how to live. Because they depend on Nigeria to buy their shoe, to buy their socks, to buy their pants, to buy their tie. Everything the leaders use is provided by Nigeria, unlike other places. So it is for us, the electorate, who should learn. Because if we expect politicians to learn, they will never change. It will be a cycle. In 2023, it will be the same story. In 2030, the same story. It's for us as electorates to learn and take our destiny into our hands and ensure that we only bring up people whom we trust can represent us. Chief Ganifawa in a campaign in this country, nobody listened to him. So if we have the opportunity, we should take away the chief from the chaff, the wheat from the chaff, and bring up people that we genuinely believe can represent us. And if they get there and they're not representing us, we should, as a constituency, rise up and remove them. Take them to court. Ask that they be recalled from office. You know, engage actively and do like what other nations do and hold their leaders accountable and not be depending on bread and bags of rice in order to vote for people who are looking for means of enriching themselves. So to me, the lesson is for us, the electorate. The politicians will never change that.
Okay. The bane of what you're saying now is recruitment, leadership recruitment. That's how you started this, whatever you're talking about here, leadership recruitment. How much faith do you have in the 2023 elections? You know, looking at the preparations by INEC and every other relevant body that should get prepared for the election, including the citizens as well. How much faith do you have and why?
If you see the scenario playing out with 2023, it's such a clear. I mean, you have the representative of the All Progressive Congress who says, I'm going to embark on continuity. I will stop from where Buhari stopped. And what has President Buhari done to us now? Inflation. Exchange rate has ballooned. People are dying every day. No hospital, no roads. You cannot travel. Education has collapsed. You know, but the lecturers are threatening to go on strike again. Nothing is working tangibly. Your means of livelihood has depreciated, yet inflation has gone up. So what you are earning is not enough to sustain what you require. We are back to 1984, when the same President Buhari was a military head of state and was distributing can of milk and bag of rice to citizens, as if we are in some country of refugees. That's where we are now. The average Nigerian cannot afford daily living. And that's what the APC candidate wants to continue for 2023. Then you go to the PDP candidate, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, who openly saw that Nigeria is a country of different ethnic nationalities, different practices of faith, and we have agreed on zoning. And we said, let the North go after President Jonathan. That's why people rejected Jonathan, so that there can be power shift. And the North represented by President Muhammad Buhari is about completing 8 years. And then he manipulated his political party, intimidated them, and forced himself, hoping to continue a regime of another northern oligarchy upon the people of Nigeria. Therefore, having no regard to constitutional requirements about demography, about zoning, and what about the other person representing Labour Party? He was a PDP man. He ran away from that political party because he couldn't get power. And then on social media every day is all about statistics that have no value. So if you ask me what is 2023, it's just that we're going to continue in the Baba's chair. It is for Nigerians to insist on restructuring, rewrite the constitution. Let us have a workable document that we can use to ensure that our nation is moving. Otherwise, I mean, you probably, by 2023, maybe the dollar will have been 2,000 naira per dollar. I don't see 2023 as any opportunity to make any important progress for our country, except we have been able to restructure and do a new constitution. If you go into that election the way Nigeria is, to your tent, so Israel.
Okay, Barrister, we will have to let you go now. Thank you so much for being a part of our program this morning. And we're glad that we were able to tap into that knowledge of yours. We're hoping we will have more interactions as the days draw nearer to 2023. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's my great pleasure.
Okay, that was Barrister Ebun-Olu Adegboruwa, and he was talking to us. And the final thing is that he said he had no faith in 2023. But there are very few people who are saying that. A lot of people are optimistic. At least that's the Nigerian spirit. We have so much faith that tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow will be better. And we're praying that 2023 will be better. But he doesn't have any faith.
He doesn't, and you're right that actually, people have a lot of expectations, given especially the very difficult environment, which Nigerians are now. People are hoping that that election will be some sort of a game changer. I think what Barrister Adegboruwa, the basis of his positioning is just that he sees the system as being incapable of midwifing a transformation, and that is his worry. To say, even if you have the best of candidates, although in his view, all the candidates appear to be the same, but apparently from what he said, the deduction is that if you have the best of candidates, the kind of system that is existing might not even make that candidate deliver, but then of course, it's probably too late to restructure before the election.
Yeah,
so
I kind of, even though, yes, I agree with you, it's probably too late to restructure before the elections, but I also kind of share his thoughts. I mean, about restructuring. Take like 2-3 years or 4 years ago, restructuring was big on the news. There were lots of conversations around it. And if you look at what he was trying to say about how that the system would not allow even the best of candidates to perform and, bring forth the changes that we all so expect, you would find out that there is no smoke without fire. There's been a lot of conversations also around how that the constitution is not the problem because the constitution is properly written, but part of the problem that we have is implementation. And I feel like if the constitution is always in the middle of this conversation, whether people who agree that it is properly written or people who agree that it is not, that also means the constitution should be properly looked into, so that we will find, where we stand, know where we stand. If restructuring becomes very pertinent, then we have to do it. If the problem is implementation, then we should channel our energy towards that. That's just my thoughts on that.
Well, we've had a terrible system. Okay, fine. But we've still had pockets of people who succeeded somehow within this system that is bad. Okay, maybe if Yar'Adua had lived for long, we would have found something to make him guilty. But for the time that he lived, there are a lot of reforms that came, even within this system, that people still talk about. So there's a possibility that if we have someone good enough at the head, at least things will begin to change. 2023 may not be the El Dorado we want, but 2023 should give us a semblance of what the future could look like. And that is what we should be looking for. So if there is a candidate, for instance, that we're sure if we recruit, because we are the ones employing them, if we recruit that person, the person will work towards this restructuring, which we've even before this administration, the reason for the National Conference by Jonathan was because of this restructuring and all that. Unfortunately, that document was not implemented. And to be fair to Jonathan, he couldn't have implemented that document at the 11th hour of his administration. And according to him, he could have done that either in his second tenure or the next person coming should have looked at it and then seen what to change or what to add and then implement it. So
you brought something up.
Yeah.
You brought something up. Following from what Uche said, and I just want to quickly chip in, which is that within the, so to speak, bad constitution or constitution that is not perfect.
That's not working. Yeah.
Okay, we've seen some political leaders or elected leaders who try to deliver. I think we need to be careful. While I subscribe to the position of Barrister Adegboruwa that there needs to be restructuring, I feel that restructuring has to be continuous.
Yeah.
If restructuring means looking at what is not working in the Constitution and changing it to make it work better, that is restructuring, right? Whatever it is, whether it's fiscal federalism, whether it is devolution of powers, whatever it is. Okay, so I feel that has to be continuous. So those who advocate restructuring should also be careful not to suggest that restructuring is going to be once and for all, and all the problems will disappear, right? Because from what the point you made, we've seen some people, even, and I give you the case of Alhaji Lateef Jakonde.
Yes,
probably the best governor we have ever experienced in civil dispensation in recent memory. He operated under the 1979 Constitution, not even 1999 Constitution, which people say is marginally better than 79 Constitution. And all the things Alhaji Jakonde has done, nobody in Lagos State, at least, if we just for the purpose of argument, nobody in Lagos State has done half of what Jakonde has done with the 1979 Constitution. So the argument, again, of Barrister Adegboruwa is very sound. But my position is just that it shouldn't give those who don't want to work, the politicians who want to hide under the, no, the Constitution is not there, so we can't deliver.
Yeah.
Whereas when you are making promises for the elections, you knew that you were going to operate the 1999 Constitution.
Yeah.
So you have a responsibility to deliver.
But then,
don't hide under the fact that until they restructure, nothing is going to happen.
do you not think it would eventually get to the point? I'm speaking off of the point you made earlier, when you said restructuring should be continuous.
Yeah.
We also understand that part of the reasons part of the many reasons restructuring hasn't happened is because of the strict, neat nature of our system of government. So no part of the government can wake up and decide that we want to change something in the constitution. There has to be a total agreement before that can happen. And if we make it to the point where there are changes happening in the constitution every other time, do you not think that there are people who would, begin to take that to their own advantage and, make it like preachers of the gospel, forgive me, who would now interpret or change things to their own favor?
Okay, I think the basic thing, the basic thing about this constitution, or restructuring rather, is the problem I see is in the definition. We've not had a clear-cut definition of what restructuring is and what it would do for Nigeria. When you hear people arguing, some of them just feel restructuring means, countries within countries. I don't know how to put this, but as if, okay, anything that I have will not benefit you. I am my own man and all that. Some people don't see it that way. Some people see a restructuring of the mind. Some people see geographical restructuring. Some people see economic restructuring. Whatever people see it, we have to come to the table and say, this is the restructuring that will work for us. And see how they can marry all these definitions so that we don't, because no matter how we see it, it's really difficult accepting something new that you really don't have a good idea about. So that is what is worrying all of us. The different ethnic groups, the different people in Nigeria that constitute the nation Nigeria, because of the interests they have, everybody's defining restructuring according to how they feel. And like my lecturer used to say, meanings are in people, not in words. So everybody will take that word and coin it in the way that it suits them. So we have to sit down, define this restructuring, and everybody says, okay, it will work for us because it is this. And then we move on. But you just go into a place and you want to do reforms of what you do not understand. We will keep going back and forth like this.
I mean, I think there are certain commonalities, amongst the restructuring school of thought, if we can use that expression. For example, they talk about a reduction in the powers of the federal government. They believe the federal government is too powerful. I think it is, in my view, I think it is that the federal government has too much financial resources because when you look at power, the federal government is still essentially focused on defense, foreign policy, coinage of currency, right? Still key, those are the key things. But in terms of revenue allocation, the federal government takes a sizable chunk. And I think that's what people are not comfortable with.
And gives chance to the states.
Then they talk about reducing the states. Either reducing, because some states are not viable, okay? Or going back to the regions. These are some of the contentious things. And then they talk about handing security over to the states, okay? Which is have state police and not the overstretched federal police, which apparently is not working well. We all can see that. So I think these are some of the commonal, and then of course what they call fiscal federalism, which means if you have resources, maybe you take 50% or whatever, and then 50% is shared, whatever it is. So on some of those, if you find between 1999 and now, most states have come to agree on some of those key things, even though many people disagree. For instance, state police. Today, Nigeria is like all the states
have some form of
have come to an agreement that there should be state police, right? So, I mean, and from what both of you have said, I think the solution would be to have a conference, so to speak. But there are also those who are afraid that if you have a conference, the major ethnic groups may just decide they are going away. And don't forget, although many people don't talk about that, Nigeria has more minorities than the majority, right? When you take the Ibibios, the Anangs, the Andonis, the Bachabas, the Jukuns, the Tis, if you put all of this together, they are actually more than the Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa in the country, right? And if you look at these smaller groups, Ijo, Urobo, and all that, people worry that if something should happen to the country, these groups are so small, they will be exposed. They will be under a lot of threats and things like that. So I think we just have to be honest as a people. and see what is practicable. Okay, so definitely there has to be continuous, in my view, continuous restructuring. Even though Uche is worried that some people may take advantage of that. But frankly, as human beings, the only thing which is permanent is change.
Yeah.
You know, so to the extent that the change doesn't become negative to us.
Okay, well, we will restructure somehow. But when Barrister was talking about Liz Truss in the UK, I was remembering a certain minister, a sitting minister now, who said that he failed. And he's still in office. And he's still in office. Right now, people under him are still spoiling for a fight because the needful had not been done. But this is Nigeria. We will survive it anyhow. But, you know, we have security concerns that are also tied to economic concerns and everything. So we will just take a break and return with our security expert who will be talking to us about various issues, including, but not limited to, how to stay safe without necessarily using guns.